Okay, so I had to take the dogs home before I could start the video because Tez, I think he wants to sit in my lap. Because he will sit, like, whenever I go to do a video now and he's in the car, he starts getting really agitated and barking at me. And the last couple of times when he was actually okay, it was I let him off of his little seat belt so he could come up into the front seat, and he sat on my lap the whole time. And I think he wants I think he's feeling neglected in his lap dog time. Because used to, we would like watch movies of an evening or TV shows or whatever, and he would just sit in my lap for like a ridiculous amount of time. Since I don't stay in the other rooms to socialize with my family, I'm not sitting on the couch, so he's not sitting in my lap. So I think that's something I'm kind of piecing together about him. I think he wants more time like that. He does like to cuddle at bedtime. So he likes to sleep up with his head on next to me on the pillow, except for every now and then he'll roll over and I'll get like the fold back down my spine, and he's like a dead weight when he's doing that, so that's not real fun. But I think my dogs are feeling neglected in that way. Just lack of lapdog time. So I guess I need to work on that. Gidge acts up in the morning. She starts fussing at me until I spend more time paying attention to her. And Ziva, I pet her when she's laying down next to because her bed's, she's got a bed that is one of those elevated ones, but it's on the floor next to me. And Taz will try to chase her out of that on occasion, but he usually gets his butt thrown back on the bed or off to one of the other beds, because that's her preferred spot. Like, she doesn't come up on the bed anymore. So that's her bed, but she doesn't get enough time either. But I guess that's a me thing, so I will get to working on that. Ziva did have one of her little episodes yesterday morning. And she tends to be really cuddly after she has those, or like when she's kind of leading up into them, she follows me around a lot more. And I didn't notice it before she did so much, which of course it was like we were sleeping for several hours, but we're in bed anyway. My sleeping is not real solid right now. But yeah, like last night I was wondering if she's going to do it again today and have another one of those episodes, because she, when we were doing my hair, she was like laying right next to me, and she doesn't normally stay there, and it was making me nervous at first because like we actually went ahead and bleached my roots and whatnot, so it's like we're messing with bleach. I don't want that getting splashed on her or whatever. And eventually, with my mom nudging her around, she went somewhere else, but she was like right by the chair for the longest time, and she doesn't normally stay there. So she's been concerning me a little bit. She will be 13 next month, and yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I was really kind of aggravated with the hair at first, but now that I've been sitting out here looking at it in the phone, I don't dislike it like I did last night and this morning. And I think it was probably just because of the lighting. It's like I don't have the full appreciation for the color that it actually is. And this section is just like up in the front. So there's supposed to be more purple, but that didn't work out. So it's a lot more blue and green than I was preferring. But then I was thinking about that this morning. It's like, that's okay too. I feel like it kind of works better with the cooler time of year anyway. So we'll just go with the cooler colors. But like I was going to throw some blue over the top of this just to like turn it purple later, and it's like, nah, maybe I won't, because I kind of like it now that I'm looking at it this way. But I was thinking, so I was frustrated the other day because I wanted to do more of the purple, pink, and orange, and I was thinking that maybe I'll just make it more that consistently and less blue and green. But I still had a bottle of green, and it's actually like this color green, but I mentioned the other day that I was really frustrated about the yellow too, because it's like there is no time that I'm going to use yellow unless it's mixed in something, because I don't want yellow in my hair. Ideally. But when I was thinking about it, okay, so last night when we were doing the colors, I actually mixed the yellow in with the color that's like the paw print on my pants. And I was sitting there looking at it, and my mom hadn't used it yet, and it's like, I really don't like that. So I decided to shift it and kind of tone it back down. So I added some like this bright blue color to it, and then some more of like the green that it's supposed to be, and mixed it in. It's like, I like that better. And that's actually this color. So it's not like horrible, but maybe not necessarily my favorite. But like, this is the only spot of that color. So that's like, I don't know how well it'll blend with anything else or whatever, but it's there. I can see what it is. I can see how it turned out. And it had more yellow in it, and I didn't like it, so I, toned it back down with the blue and more green, and liked it better. I'm pretty sure this old guy's just staring at me. He's got his dog in the dog park, and like I look up, and he's just okay. But anyway, so I've been thinking for a while. It's like I have this green color, and it was like the only green I had left. It's like, I don't want to waste it. I don't want to just like throw it away. I'm pretty confident nobody's gonna want it since it's already opened and a chunk of it's gone, and they don't know exactly what color it is. But yeah, it's like I'm wanting to go more towards the purple, pink, and orange, right? So I was thinking this morning is this actually works pretty well. So, she got all the like the blues and greens and those kinds of things. So okay, so we bleached it, but there was still some of like the orange and the pink from before left over. So it was like, all right, so we got to be careful because green can't go over pink, and blue can't go over orange. And so I wrote it down on the paper, right? So like the paper we had covering the table. And she's like, okay, so she's trying to remember this, and it worked out well enough. I'm sure it won't turn up until it starts fading a little bit more. I was thinking about, it makes sense. It's actually perfect at this point in time, because the next couple times I do it, I'll just focus on using up the blues and greens, right? And, less purple. I mean, I'll probably still include the purple, but none of the bright, warm colors, right? Or just, stick with the blues and the greens for the next couple times. And that'll use up probably most of what I got blue and green wise. And then after that, switch to mainly purple, and then I can transition to my warmer colors, and it shouldn't be an issue, because then I won't have to worry about, the pink can't go over green and the orange can't go over blue, right? That's not something we'll have to consider, because we'll have, we'll neutralize the whole thing by purpling it, because I don't use yellow. But then even then, since I have this bottle of yellow, it's like I can adjust the shades of the orange and the pinks and whatnot that I have to give me a little, some different options there, and kind of extend how long those kind of colors go, right? So they could work out really well on that end, right? So yes. So basically I was just getting myself wound up for nothing. However, I was still kind of frustrated, like, with the colors this morning and whatnot. And yes, I have a plan. I have it mapped out now. But before I really spent the time getting it figured out like that, I was kind of frustrated because it's one of those things where I've been thinking, I think it's just learning to navigate through the stuff where I say something that I want to do and then somebody's trying to shift it so I do more of what they want to do. Because my mom's all about the blue and greens, or more blues than anything. But, like, she doesn't want to do her hair this bright, the bright blues. So since I do my hair the bright colors, she can do it on my head and just be, content, right? And she can still see it, and it's, happy day, right? 11/11. But, there's still that point of working through that piece of, when I mentioned the thing that I wanted to do, which is go more toward the warmer colors consistently and have, like, the purple, pink, and orange be my go-to colors, because there are still plenty of ways to adjust that, like, include this in that. I really like that color. And, that's probably, I have to get more of that color hopefully I'm not around here a huge amount of time, and hopefully in the not too distant future I can actually go have it done professionally somewhere. But in the meantime, making do with what I got. I found a way to make it work, but there's still that piece of being frustrated because, when I say something that I want for myself, it's like she goes over the top of it because she wants the other colors, right? She wants me to have the blue in my hair, so she got me mostly blues. And then, okay, so there's this one purple in there called Violet Night, and there were 2 of those. I don't think she intended for there to be 2 of those, but there were 2 of those. But like that one and the ultraviolet, those were ones that I absolutely wanted. I had those in my cart. I had another color that's similar to this one in my cart, right? All these things, the ones that I requested. And then it's like, she tossed all of those, but just got me the ones that she picked out. So it's like there's still that piece where, she's essentially trying to pull me into her way of wanting to do things. And, as long as I got the bright colors, I'm really pretty happy with that. But still, yeah, it's like I'm navigating that space of, I mean, she's essentially, it's still, she's doing what she wants, right? It's over the top of, yes, I just want my hair done. And since it's getting done for free, that's a pretty good thing. But still, it's like when the thing that you want and you request kind of gets blown out of the water, then it's like, well, that kind of sucks. And it's that piece of, all the ways in which I've found myself being sort of shifted over into what somebody else wants for me instead of doing what I want, right? So, yeah, I can make it work. I'm still happy with the bright colors one way or another. They're not the ones that I wanted to go to as my usuals, as the new normal, that it's like we just scrapped all that, and because there are different shades you can go with it. If we want to go brighter in the summer and still kind of the, more jewel tones in the winter, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I'm still kind of wanting to wander from the blues and the greens, right? But, you know, there's a whole lot of me talking about my hair and trying to make it make sense. Anyway, the point of the thing is just me coming to realize all the different ways, and yes, my fingers are blue. That's the problem with the blue colors, is as I'm washing them out, I don't use gloves, so I'm basically turning into a Smurf for the time being. But, is what it is. Again, it'll be gone in a couple days anyway. So, yeah, so like, as I'm trying to learn how I've lost myself so completely through my lifetime, it's like these little decisions where I say that I want something, and then, oh, we're going to do it this way instead, because I'm still doing your hair, right? But that's like one of those things. It's like, it's no big deal, and I can flow with it anyway, like one way or the other, right? I can make it work, but it's not what I preferred. So it's like, through these little, sorts of things where, okay, like I have this general thing that I want, and then she makes it her thing, right? So yeah, the colors are the thing that is just the most obvious, I think, right now, because it's something that I'm still, she's still helping me with my hair for the time being, so, and I'm still living there for the time being, so it works out fine. But at the same time, it's still a way that it's like still a means of trying to diminish me and what I want to pull me into what she wants, right? So, yes, I know this sounds really dumb, and it's like, it's hair color, right? But it's so much more than that. It's just like, just seeing all the different layers to the different things over the years, where I've ultimately tended to yield and go along with what somebody else wants over what I want, right? Or they can talk me into doing things their way, and it's like, it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just, that's not what I want. Right? So if I want my go-tos to be the warmer kind of colors, and then we end up with a whole lot of the cooler kind of colors, then that's kind of the thing. But it's not that it's a problem, it's just that it wasn't what I preferred, right? So while I'm happy that it's done, and I do like how it turned out now that I'm looking at it in the camera, I think that's the biggest thing, is just that, this is one of those ways that the universe is showing me, all the little ways that you, sort of just allow yourself to be chipped away at, right? So it's like what I wanted, and yes, I still got some of this, but like this is the main spot that you see it. Like there is more purple in there, but like there's this bright kind of yeah, like an aqua color up there somewhere. And it's like right on the top. So, I mean, I can move the part and kind of blend it one way or another, and it's okay, but it's still like, it's maybe not my preferred. But again, learning, and, we're still navigating, and I'm still okay as long as I got the bright colors on my head. But it's still just that piece of, allowing I guess losing a part of myself, chipping away at me and what I want through means of shifting to what she wants, right? And that's like one of those things. It's like, I know it sounds really trivial and petty, and it's hair color. But at the same time, it's like, these are the kind of decisions through my lifetime that have been coming up, and when I yield every single time to what everybody else wants, that's ultimately, like how I've ended up losing so much of myself along the way. And I think that's ultimately the lesson that the universe is teaching me in this whole thing. But again, like, you know, this green color, I mean, because it's now mostly this, it's like a blue-green now. It'll be gone, you know, so it's at least giving me the opportunity to use up that one, since I was thinking about it. It's like, how am I going to use, you know, what's my means of getting rid of this when I want this other thing? So I'm going to use it as a transition. And the next time we'll just mainly green and purple, or green, blue, and purple, mainly with the green and blue. And then after that, mostly purple. And then we'll kind of, you know, just transition over. So go back to the colors that I do want, which is more of the purple, pink, and orange. And then, yeah. I don't know. Anyway. That whole thing, like those becoming my colors was kind of a weird meandering process to get me there too, right? So it's like I've talked on here before about how I have had certain things that when I try to navigate what I would want in said scenario, like what I would want in my own little space, like what would I do if I had, you know, a space of my own that I could paint however I wanted and all that stuff. It's like the things that I'm finding that I really enjoy, it's like the universe is taking me there. So, you know, kind of a roundabout way of getting me there, but then showing me, you know, and when I'm in the process of it and really enjoying the process of getting to the thing, it's like, yes, okay, the blue and I mean, I do like this blue. The blues and the greens, I like them. And two. Honestly, okay, this is one of those points where I feel like it's kind of a full circle kind of moment. Because before I started doing my hair the brighter colors, well, I mean, I had done like the red tones, right? So when I was dyeing my hair relatively normal colors, because I've been dyeing my hair since I was like 20, it was like browns with more of a reddish tone, right? Reddish brown, specifically. And sometimes the red, you know, it would fluctuate a little bit. And, you know, I came close to this kind of color, but, you know, I wasn't into all the vivids back then, mainly because I was afraid of standing out, right? So it was in that time frame. So in 2020, I talked a lot about how I was on a dating app very, very briefly. And there was this profile on there where this guy said that if you have or have ever had green hair, don't talk to me because I'm looking for somebody I can take to church. Right? So, and what it did is like it ignited like this. Oh, it's the green that's a problem, is it? You know, like green hair means I can't go to church. Okay, cool. You know, so it's like this moment, this thing that like sparked this like real intense, sarcastic slant about my way of looking at the thing, right? What I said in that moment was that when I find my person, right, it's going to be somebody that doesn't care what I do with the outside packaging, right? Because he's going to know me and love me because of me, right? Not because of how I choose to express. So, you know, like that incident, just coming across this profile that has this, you know, this kind of shitty remark about the hair. And I was at that point in time, 2020, starting to do more of the, you know, the brighter colors. There was a time I did do like this weird aqua-y color. But it was still mainly like the purples and the reds and stuff, right? I still like these. I really like how they look together right there. But when I saw the thing about the green, then it gave me like, it was essentially at some level, it seemed to be like this permission slip to do the thing to spite the people who claimed that that's something that, makes you unacceptable for church or whatever, right? It's like, fuck, I got my fucking Masters of Divinity, so yeah, but you're telling me that my green hair means I can't go to church. Okay. Cool. I'll take it. Which, as I said, since I divorced my whole belief system when I divorced my ex, it works out pretty well because I have no intention of going into a church unless I absolutely can't get out of it. Like, I mean, and there's no situation where you absolutely can't get out of it, but like my cousin's bridal shower or baby shower, the other one, or another cousin had a baby shower, and it was like, and I don't think that one was in a church per se, it was like a former church, but still, you got that churchy ambiance kind of a thing, and it's like, I don't want that. I'm not a fan. Let's lose that, right? So, aside from those things being for family members having the celebration thing, which honestly, they didn't need me there. It would have been perfectly okay if I hadn't gone. But aside from like those kind of situations, it's like I really have no desire to ever step foot in another church again in my life. Yeah, but like that full circle piece, right? So it's like, so I feel, and I've talked a lot about how like I feel like this whole situation, like the counterpart connection, I feel like that's coming in very soon. And, especially because I like me better than I ever have before, right? Just like where I'm at now, I feel much more at peace in my own energy and my own way of being. I'm still obviously learning things, and it's still okay to change your mind about stuff if you so decide to, right? But at the same time, it's like navigating the things and realizing where I've allowed certain things to chip away at me and who I want to be, because my mom got me the blue, which like I said, I really like this color blue. So it's just, I feel like it's still not my preferred per se, but I do really like that. But then who's to say, a year and a half down the line, I don't change my mind and just go strictly to like the blues and purples, right? It could happen, right? It's just like whatever you want to do, any given moment you want to do it, then okay. But like, okay, even like the really silly thing is, actually, I don't think I finished that other part. So since I feel like the counterpart connection is coming in pretty quick, it kind of actually makes sense to me that I have green hair now, so that should we meet in the next couple weeks or something, I have the green hair. So, right, so he can show up and, not give a shit about the expression of me, because he still gets me, right? And, okay, to speak to that point of, well, you've never met him, how do you know any of these things, right? Well, going back to that whole the counterpart piece, right? So one of the things that I am pretty confident of with this whole twin flame journey is that we're directly connected. And when it comes down to it, essentially it's the idea that at this other level where we've always been together, we, actually, the way that it's coming to mind is crafted one another for the physical, the physical representation, the avatar that is us, at this other level, we put that together, right? So specifically so that we would be drawn to each other, and, nothing else could get in the way when the time is right, so, yeah, so, okay, and like the whole point of the twin flame piece is feminine has to go first, but as I've been doing my healing stuff and setting down some of the baggage, right, releasing the stuff that doesn't work, figuring out where certain ideas came from, like, going back to that vision that I had, that I've talked about a lot, where, I saw us together and I saw him like, bring me flowers, right? But then it was like the vision got stuck and I just kept getting all these flowers, and I started getting really, really anxious until I finally said, stop, I don't deserve it. And then it kind of like let up, because it's very much like that, what's being in the pressure cooker, right? What's going on inside of me when this other thing comes to mind, right? And anxiety came up in that moment. So then it's like, okay, why do you feel like you don't deserve this, right? So then I go back to that piece of, like the in that specific case, what came up was, in my entire life, my mom was always the one getting the presents for everybody, right? So that was her thing. My dad, he worked, brought in the money, and she was spending the money on the things, right? But he did not put forth the effort onto any of the gifts or anything, right? So there was this thing that happened, I want to say I was probably like 16, where he happened to be at CVS on Valentine's Day and saw this pair of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger socks, and he knew I liked them. I was really into Tigger, which goes back to that whole thing with the tigers showing up and, me realizing that boundaries were something I needed to work on, right? So it's like the little ways that the universe is like leaving you this trail of magic, and you just have to find it and make sense of it, put the pieces together for yourself, for your own, it's like the universe is leading you the map through the things that you really will come to love and enjoy, but you have to choose to follow it, right? You have to choose to want the things, right? To want to understand what it's trying to lead you to, right? So anyway, in the dream, in the vision, in the moment, I was faced with this point of, that is the only time my dad ever did anything for me, right? So aside from that, it was always my mom. So when I'm existing in this space where, the world outside of me, since I was going to church and stuff like that, was saying that you got to have something outside of yourself to save you, to make you worthwhile, right? And you're still not going to be worthwhile. It's just that you need something outside of yourself to save you. And then that's it. You don't go anywhere else, right? You don't do the things. You still don't get to live, because you're always waiting on somebody else to save you and to fix it all. But anyway, for the space of the vision, what I realized was, because that was my upbringing, that waiting for somebody to save me piece, and also dad doesn't give a shit, right? So then when I end up in the situation of picking literally the worst possible option for me that I could find, because I needed either my dad or my brother to tell me I did not have to go through with it, being my ex, because of all the bad beliefs and, the energetic ickiness that led me to that space of feeling like a burden, because I was still living with my parents at that point in time. I mean, I've been in the military and came out of basic training, but it's like, okay, so we've done all these other things. Like, I went to undergrad. It's like, okay, when I was in high school, I knew I had to go to undergrad, right? Because that was my mom's biggest regret, that she hadn't done it. So I had no other option but to do it. So I did it. But then, as I was, I was coming to the end of that, then it was like, what's the next thing? Well, obviously you're going to get a job, right? And, my career path being psychology was my undergrad degree, bachelor's of science in psychology and religious studies, which brings a whole lot of, what the fuck are you going to do with that? Right? And the bigger thing with either of those is essentially, to do anything more with them, you still need more school, right? I didn't really want to. It's like, okay, the point of me getting the psych degree was because I didn't know what I wanted from my life. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know any of those things. I knew that I had to go to college because my mom told me that was my option. So I went into psychology because it was like, maybe it'll help me understand myself better. I went into religious studies because it was something that I was interested in, because I had started going, okay. So I went to church up until I was like 7. I don't know how often we really went, because, we spent most weekends at my great-grandparents' farm in Bloomfield. And that was like the whole weekend. And I don't remember going to church with them. Right? That wasn't a priority back then. What I remember was, after my great-grandfather died, and then my dog had to be put down, and then I almost drowned in the ocean, and then the shit came up with my cousin because, basically he was taking advantage of the fact that I was, I was losing it. I had no idea who I was in the world. My, the person that I cared the most about, my great-grandfather, had passed away. My dog, that was like my number one protector and all that stuff, had to be put down. And then, almost drowned in the ocean. So it's like all these different things that had already come up. And then my cousin, decides he comes along as the one with the information, right? And my life's not teaching me anything other than this fucking sucks right now. And so he decides to try to enlighten me, and essentially was taking advantage of the fact that so much was going wrong for me in that span of time, right? So then what happens was, he, tries to enlighten me. It's this big humiliating thing. He tells everybody we had sex, and we did not, but I was 35 before I fucking was able to unpack enough of that I could sit down and actually think back through things, right? Because all of these little things that we were, essentially activating the crab, right? That protective nature in me. And it's like, this thing hurts, so, we're all these layers of closing down because this hurts, now this hurts, now this hurts, so trying to navigate through this space. So basically the shit with my cousin just locked it into, I don't want to exist in this space anymore, right? So, when I'm 8, and my grandfather's already passed away, mom just gets this whim that, she doesn't like the church that we went to sporadically in my younger years, because she got really pissy because the pastor was obsessing over what people wore to church on Sunday, or Easter Sunday, because he did not think it was their Sunday's best. And Easter especially, you're supposed to be, it's your Sunday best, right? And she didn't like where he was coming from with the attitude toward the congregation at that point. So she took us out of that church, and we started looking around for another church. And everything was going wrong in my world. I don't want to go to church. It's like, with everything going wrong, it's like I never had a problem believing that God was real. But I got to a point where it was, I believed that God hated me, and if God hated me, then I hated God, right? So then it was like this new level of resistance and acting out. And of course, I think 8 is about when your ego starts getting established pretty well in there too. So yeah, so I got to a point where we never knew from one weekend to the next where we were going to end up at. I didn't like that. Everything else was going wrong. So I started throwing tantrums because I didn't want to go. So eventually we stopped going, right? Eventually it was like pretty quick. Once I had I remember this one weekend I had a really big meltdown, like not fucking wanting to go at all. It was like after that we just stopped. And I think that was because it felt like now my great-grandfather had passed away, so now this death thing is real, and now we're activated on this point of I don't want to go to hell, right? Because that's essentially, if you go to church, that's your only option. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell, right? But essentially it's coming back to that point of needing something outside of you to save you. But that idea, all that does is block you from ever doing the work to find out who you truly are and who you truly want to be, right? So there were times when I was operating from that religious space where I was a bit of a shit. Because I've been made to, even though I said the damn prayer, asking Jesus into my heart and all that bullshit, it's like the suicidal ideation. It's like it didn't go away. It didn't fix it. It made it worse, because ultimately I have now put forth this idea that I want, I want the heaven, right? I don't want to go to hell. But in actuality, it's like you're already in hell. This earth space existence, believing yourself to be separated from all that is hell, right? And the idea that you need something outside of yourself to save you, to fix you, just locks you into the cycle of you can't find you because you don't know how to get there. So, I was very hung up on that part of not, the suicidal ideation can go away. Shit's still going wrong. But what the fuck? It's like, for a time, it's like I was trying a lot harder to try to be worthy. But this hell space existence taught me very much, ingrained very much in me that I was not worthy, right? The only way to become worthy is to go into the darkest parts of yourself and to realize why they're there and heal them at that space, right? So the idea of Jesus going through hell, spending 3 days in hell or whatever, is like, the point of that was not so nobody else ever had to do it. It was just to show you that it's possible, right? But the church turned it into this other thing where now you're looking to this guy outside of yourself. You got to rely on him for your salvation. And since that's not how it actually comes about, you're fucked. And now I'm getting chilly again, so don't know if I turned my radio down or off. There, it's off real quick. Otherwise get blasted with the music. Probably a good idea that I can see the clock too. 444. And it's 404. It was actually 4404, and then I saw 404, and then my brain got really confused and I just merged them all together. But anyway. Yeah. So how do I meander back? Anyway, so like this counterpart connection, right? There's 4 4s now, for real. ultimately what it is as I go into the depths of my own pain and like the hell that is all the junk I've accumulated from my existing in this life space. That is hell. It fucking sucks, right? And like all the days that I've spent crying my way through trying to make sense of the things, right? So ultimately, it's finding this other aspect of myself that I've had that's been with me my entire life that I was taught to ignore, right? So, I've talked about how when I was 4, he checked in, but like before then, it's like he was always with me, right? And just because he checked in before he incarnated doesn't mean that he ceased to be with me at that point. It means that once he came into a body, he had his own lessons. So while we've always been connected, and we're still, it's like the junk that I was taking on, like all the ways that my life told me that I was unlovable or whatever, unworthy. It's like he's also directly affected by the beliefs that I'm accumulating, that are stacking up for me, right? And so when I found out who he was in this life existence space, and knowing, because I always wanted, there was always a part of me that believed that my exact match was out there, but I struggled with it, right? Because of the lack of boundaries, because all of the ways that I was taught to, basically adjust to what other people wanted, right? So go back to the hair color piece. It's like all the ways I kept dimming myself, right? My own light, diminishing myself. See, somebody doesn't like this about me, okay, well then we'll just let that go and we'll just adjust, right? So it's like I've spent my whole life adjusting to what I thought other people wanted of me to try to be lovable, but ultimately it just made me less me, which really makes it hard to feel love and to be connected to love when you don't love yourself, right? So when I found the person that exists on the other side of it, right? The as above to the so below, right? When I first came across his energy in that live stream, and I said the thing and he responded, I didn't know who he was to me. But the next thing that happened immediately was I started this, and I didn't even know it was connected to that in any way until a lot of time later. I started just feeling really unsafe in my body, but then also realizing that it's like it wasn't really a new thing. It was just a whole lot of like layers of the dissonance, like the ways that I padded myself to try to avoid the dissonance in my life, right? So like one of my addiction points was stress eating, because I knew something was off and I didn't know how to deal with it, but I could distract myself with food, right? So stress eating doesn't make the pain go away by any means. Or it actually makes it so you kind of need more of the junk to get rid of, to kind of push the feelings off, but you can't really push them off, right? But that's like ultimately the whole issue with addictions of any kinds, is it's a means of, there is something in your space, in your life, that does not agree with the core of who you are, and that dissonance is what you're trying to mask, right? Trying to hide behind, trying to get rid of, without actually facing it. So, like that was one of the biggest things with like the connections that I had even. Well, okay, go back to the guy that I thought I was going to marry, right? As soon as sex got involved in the whole situation, that became a thing to hide behind, right? So rather than facing the the stuff that was hard and scary in my life, now we have this other thing to hide behind, and then we don't have to face those things. But that doesn't really make it go away. It just further disconnects you from yourself, right? Adds more layers that you have to eventually process through if you want to truly get to a point where you can live and have a good, worthwhile life, right? Worthwhile existence. Ouch, my finger's locking up. Enjoy my corgi with aviators. Incorgnito. Yeah. Anyway. It's the little things, y'all. And it goes nicely with my Christmas pants. Anyway. So, you know, after I connect, we have this encounter where I say a thing and he responds, and it's like, in his responding, everything just kind of crumbles, right? Because it's like, basically, like, all the things that have been built upon this really sketchy foundation can't keep up, right? That's the whole thing. If you don't have a good foundation, then it's not going to stand up when everything, you know, comes in and crashes against it, and, you know, suddenly everything's just like, whoop. And I was like, now what are you going to do? What are you going to do? How are you going to deal with this? How are we going to process through, right? So, you know, there was more stress eating for a while and all that shit. That didn't help. You know, but I talked about how he started showing up in dreams. And it's like, I don't know why this is happening. You know, and it was still, you know, that happened in 2021, started showing up in dreams, that same time frame, and I started sending myself messages with the dreams. However, so in 2023, that was when I committed my love and career lives over to the universe to take the lead on, right? So at that point, I got hooked on one of his songs, and, you know, it's just the way like it came across my path. It was just like, I had listened to his music before, but then it was suddenly like, is this a new song? I don't remember this song, right? But he had like a little video of him singing the song, and like I started listening to it, and it's like I just started playing it over and over again. It's like, it was not new. It's just, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to connect with it before I turned my love and career lives over to the universe to take the lead on, because now it's this point that the universe is saying, hey, follow this. This is an important thing. Follow it, right? So I start listening to the song over and over again, and one of the things that happens pretty quickly is it's just like, I feel like somebody gets it somehow. Like, all the shit that I've been carrying my whole life, somebody else out there gets it, right? And it was like, in that connection, that, you know, that common space of he also gets it, it wasn't that, like, I still didn't know who he was to me at that moment. It was through listening to a song, suddenly, you know, this voice chimes at my intuition, my heart chimes in and says, that's him, that's the one you've been looking for all your life. And my response was, yeah, right, he's out of my league. And it's not wrong, because at the time it pretty much was, because I was, you know, as diminished from myself. I mean, I probably could have been further diminished, but it was pretty, you know, I had no idea who I was, what I wanted from life, why I was unable to do more with my life, right? And then next thing I know, universe is pointing me in this guy's direction, and, you know, my response immediately was, yeah, right, he's out of my league. The response back immediately was, are you going to let us do this, or are you going to try it your way again? Because that's worked so well for you in the past. It's like, what do I have to lose, right? So what happens is he starts showing up in these visions, right? And suddenly I'm processing through stuff because of this connection, right? And it's like, okay, like the piece that I talked about earlier, the vision where he sends me flowers, and then it's like more than a one, like, I mean, it just becomes a common thing, right? But the vision gets stuck, and I just get all these flowers until I say, stop, I don't deserve it. And then intuition that is also him, because as above, so below, says, why do you think you don't deserve it? Right? So then I'm walking through, navigating this deep layers of stuff that I didn't even know how to approach previously. But it was specifically that piece so the universe can guide me through it, right? So, and this whole idea of, you know, that direct connection, right? So, okay, so I had this little scenario play out in my head recently where we connected on one of his live streams again, and he asked me something trying to figure out if he knew me or not, right? And I said something to the effect of how we hadn't met in the physical space. We've met once, well, I mean, I guess technically once, but technically also a couple, depending on what level you want to count the online space, like what, because the energy is totally connected, but it wasn't in the physical. However, the physical versions of us were still communicating through this space, right? So anyway, what I came up with, it was something to the effect of, and yet we've been together at this other level. Somehow, like, we're connected at this other level and always have been. And, you know, essentially that as above, so below, right? The mirroring piece, right? That was a painful thing too when I started connecting with that as above, so below. So all the things that, okay, so, you know, the time period where I was actively doing things to try to force myself to go through with the suicide, you know, because I was really hard on me, right? And what it ultimately amounts to was, in the space I was beating up my heart, he was directly connected to that too somehow, right? So if we look at that as one of those layers of the validation piece, where, you know, he doesn't know why he's got this thing that's also there, but meanwhile I'm attacking the core of me, you know, I'm attacking my heart, because my life is telling me that I'm not supposed to exist in this space, and that I can't figure out, like, I can't make it work where I want to stay here because everything's going wrong. But I'm also completely unaware that the things that I was saying about myself ultimately was directly affecting him at this other layer. Like, we're directly connected energetically, but when you're raised to think that there's nothing else outside of you, then ultimately, you know, how much are we all hurting each other because of turning the anger and the pain against ourselves, trying to force us to follow through with, like, the suicidal ideation or whatever, right? Or to make it so, okay, now you know, if I do this, this, and this, I really can't believe that I'm worthy of existing. So this means I have to go through with it. I have to end it for me, right? But then I couldn't, right? Because I'm still directly connected to the other side of this, which is not, I mean, ultimately not going to allow it, because there's, you know, there's this, you know, the soul contract where it's going to be hard, but we're going to figure out everything's going to be okay. And in the end, it will be totally worth it. But it's going to suck a lot in the meantime, you know? And once I encountered him on here, it at least forced me to have to go through this stuff. But anyway, as I have done my own work, right, it's directly connecting to him, because as above, so below, right? As within, so without, right? So he is the as above, So below, right here, right? My blue fingers. And then, you know, as as within for, you know, for his heart space, so without the me. Right? So okay, so another thing that came up recently, and I feel like this is kind of that piece of, I think, the first interaction on the live stream, right, where I said something and he responded, which was at the very end of the live stream. It seemed like there was this layer of, like he was trying to figure out if he recognized, or if he knew me at all or something, right? Like, who is this person that randomly said the thing? Right? But for me, it's like everything just kind of crumbled. Right? So then I'm processing through all these things that I have to kind of, you know, now I have to heal from. And of course I didn't know what was going on still at that point. So, you know, because 2023, when I turned my 11 career lives over to the universe to take the lead on, that is when it was brought to my attention who he was to me. As I started following through with that, right, listening to more of the music, connecting to his energy in the music and whatnot, then that has been something that's been hugely supportive in my journey, trying to navigate through the junk in my own life, right? So yeah, as I'm navigating through the junk, it's doing work. You know, it's working for him as well, right? So, you know, I've talked a lot about how I always felt disconnected from the masculine aspect of myself, right? So I was always looking for something outside of me to save me, right? I didn't feel the safety of the frame, right? So as he's been doing his own thing, living his existence, creating a life for himself, you know, it's like I didn't feel I was capable of doing anything that could amount to anything for me to, I didn't have the frame within myself, essentially, right? But I did. I just didn't know it. I was disconnected from it, right? So as he's been building this amazing thing for himself, I had to start finding my own frame, right? So when I started doing the YouTube thing, right, that was my means of processing through stuff, getting the junk out of my system, purging out the baggage that I've been carrying my whole life and couldn't set down, but didn't know why. You know, I didn't even know what any of it was to, you know, to be able to have the space to do that, right? So as I start doing this thing and trusting that I can do the thing, right, which, I mean, it's not so far has yet to pay me anything, so, but it's still like a critical part of my process, right? That, how the fuck's there a school bus back here? I feel like it's too late in the day for a field trip. Doesn't look like anybody's on it either. Anyway, 333 as I said. So it's like it didn't really make sense, and yet at the same time, it's like I know that I'm supposed to do it, but I don't know what the ultimate purpose it serves is, I guess. No, I think she's just making sure everybody's off. Yeah. So if I'm, you know, making sense of this, right? So I've talked a lot about how the masculine is the frame, the feminine is the flow, right? So if he's been building and doing all these things in the physical to put something together, I still have to be able to do my part of it, right? Which is navigating through the healing stuff, right? And as I've done that, I like myself better than I ever have, I've said that on here before. I think I said that in here today. But like this doesn't exist without doing this thing, right? This hard thing that is significantly less hard than it was before. But anyway, so yeah. So when I had the vision or the little scenario play out in my head the other day, where I was like talking about how, ultimately what it came down to was talking to him about how we've been guiding each other even though we didn't actually know each other in this space, right? And there's this other thing that came up. Okay, so there were 2 days that there were live streams, and the first day I went into it and it's like I feel like I'm supposed to say that I'm here or something, say something to reveal that I'm here, but I don't know. Anyway, right? So I go home. I was at home. Fuck it. Anyway, so in this space, right? So as I'm getting ready for bed, what it ended up being was these other layers of feeling stuck. Like I felt frozen, like I don't know what to say, but I feel like I'm supposed to say something, right? And it goes back to like, okay, in 2020, I mentioned how I came across his website at one point, and I got this really strong feeling that I was supposed to send him a message. It's like, what the hell am I going to say? Why would I do that? Why would I send this music producer an email when I don't feel like I'm not in music? I don't need help producing anything, right? So it's like, why would I do that? That doesn't make sense, right? So it was like, yeah, forget that. But then what I came up was this other thing, and essentially that, if I would have followed through on it, it would have been the thing that basically brought me to that level of crumbling, that tower moment, right? Because it would just be connecting with his energy enough to force me to have to start doing the work. And so when, he does his live stream, and okay, there was this moment I got... Okay, there was something he was talking about his dog or something, and like I wanted to put like the little heart reaction on the thing, right? I couldn't find it for some reason. It's like, where did it go? It's usually right here next to the comment thing, right? But for whatever reason, in that moment, it wasn't there. So I like clicked something, and it ended up taking me out of the thing. So I went back into it, and I think he saw my screen name pop up at that point in time, but he wasn't looking at his phone when I did the first time. And there's this moment, and I even wrote about it. It's like, I would like to think that it was on your end, but it's probably just on my end. But, because in the journals and whatnot. It's like there was this moment. It's like when I saw him see my name, or the assumption that he saw my name. It's like there was this moment of like, I felt like my heart jumped. Okay. And it's like, there was like this moment where I was like, is that him or is that me? Right? Because that direct connection. There's my blue fingers again. But anyway, so it was just like this little thing that was kind of weird. But then when I was thinking about it later, then I like had a meltdown again, because it was like, how do I know? What if? Like all these things, all these layers of suddenly questioning myself again and doubting myself again. And it's like, I felt his energy very strongly around me. And, as I'm having this little internal panic attack kind of thing. And I know this sounds silly, but it's like he said, like his energy right there with me. And it's like, what I heard was, I will never give up on you. Everything's going to be okay. It's like, just trust, right? And so it's like, okay, so then I was thinking, if I could say, what would I say if I could say anything to basically be that sort of nudge without making it obvious in this space that it's a nudge. And the thing that came up, okay, the first thing that came to mind was, what's your least favorite vegetable? But then I was thinking, it's like, I started thinking about this little, I don't even know who said it, but it was like this sort of interview thing or something that I heard somebody say. Okay, this guy said, oh, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it might be DyeBones on Instagram. But maybe not. I don't know. But like the thing that came up was, you know, how it's way cooler talking to little kids because, you know, once you're an adult, nobody cares what your favorite dinosaur is anymore. You know, so I had this moment. It's like, okay, so maybe that's the thing, right? So he does another one the next day. And, you know, at one point, you know, I had said something, but it wasn't anything useful. It was like, you know, coming to this city or whatever. It's like, meh. Yes, knowing he wasn't really paying attention to that. But then, you know, they said, you know, 30 seconds, then I'm out. And so I threw out this question, and it was like, what's your favorite dinosaur? Right? And so, you know, his friend in the room asked him, and he's just like, you know, like it looked like he was caught off guard because it's like that was the question that he wasn't expecting. Who the fuck cares about fucking dinosaurs, right? But I say the thing, and you know, just like the way he ended it was kind of like a what the fuck thing. But as I've thought about it later, I think that is kind of that internal nudge because we are communicating at this other level, right? So then for me to say the thing that triggers his process now, because right, the masculine's process is supposed to be like way less intensive because I've already been doing all this work, right? I have to deal with the emotional baggage of all this shit for like, you know, my whole process. This is my process, right? He's got the framework. I got to figure out the rest of this shit. So, you know, but yet he's been with me the whole time. 222. And yet also not actually physically with me. So it's me learning to trust myself and trust my guidance. And then if we're actually having this telepathic communication because he is also with me, and then suddenly it ignites this other thing of that's the trigger question now, right? The question that's like, what the fuck is that all about, right? So, you know, it's kind of, you know, the sort of, he's, you know, honestly what's coming to mind is like, he is, you know, there on this foundation expecting one thing or another, and then I come along and it's just kind of like a jab in the side as I go past, and now he's got to deal with what that triggers in him because at this other level, he already knew that was the thing, right? So even though it might not have been in his immediate cognizant awareness, we're still having this communication. And I was so excited when that thought came to mind. And then it was like, that is so completely random, right? Because who would really care? That's not something you would expect to hear. You're expecting, oh, are you coming to this city? Or are you going to that city? Or, you know, teaching, music, whatever, like all these things. And then somebody shows up with that, and yet telepathically, right, that this the connection deep down, suddenly you're getting this nudge, or maybe like a jab in the side, and now you got to deal with it, right? So tag you're it, kind of a thing. But anyway, vegetable, that's next. So yeah, so like I feel like that's one of those things too. It's like the whole process of the guidance, right? Following the guidance, right? The conversation that I had in that moment after I had this meltdown the night before because I didn't really, you know, it's like I wanted to believe this one thing, but then I wasn't entirely sure. But then this other thing came up that I enjoyed a lot until it was time to say it in the thing, right? And it wasn't, okay. It wasn't that I had a problem saying it. It was, you know, just finding the space to say it where I knew he saw it. Which there too, that one time, the thing that brought the tower moment on me was I said a thing at the very end and he responded. So then it's like big tower moment on my end, right? So now it's like I said the thing at the end and he responded, but at this other level, we've already been communicating it. So now he's, you know, got to deal with, now he can't just bury it with this other junk. And it's interesting because okay, I kept having this concern of, it seems like he was on tour all the time. It's like, how is this ever going to work? And, you know, like our paths ever cross if he's always working all the time, right? And then, you know, he has this little thing that he puts out where he's taken like a brief hiatus basically from touring. And I watched this tarot reading, I think it was a Kino reading, and it said, it was like, it was one of those from your person kind of things, and it was figuring out, let's see, what was the exact topic was something of, or the question at least was, where are they at now? And the response that it, like the pile that I picked, the response to that question was exactly where I said I'd be, right? Because at this other level where I'm stressing out because he's on tour, so how is he ever going to find me if he's always on tour and, you know, not taking the time to slow down? But then he's, you know, suddenly not touring at the moment, and now there's space, right? So we'll see, but I still feel like all that's in the near future as far as like it coming together. There's still a lot of things that it's like I still get the messages of, it's probably my hawk. That it's going to be something surprising that you don't expect. It's like, okay. It's like I really don't see how it could be anything other than something online, one way or another. But at the same time, it's like, just stop trying to figure it out. Don't try to expect anything, right? Because you're not going to expect it. It's going to be a time that when it's right, nothing will be able to stop it, kind of a thing, right? That's the whole point with divine timing. When the time is right, it will not be, you know, too late or too soon. It will be right exactly on time. So beyond that, stop fucking worrying about it. Just roll. Just roll, right? So anyway, on that note, I don't know if I'm going to skate. I feel like I want to skate for a little bit anyway, because we're supposed to get like 3 to 6 inches of snow tonight, and then another 1 to 3 on top of that Saturday night. So I feel like today is probably my time if I'm going to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to be out for a while. And it's supposed to start snowing around 5. It is like almost 4:40. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and go see about skating. And yeah, see what happens. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.